The lights in the studio burned brighter than usual, the kind that made every movement feel exposed. It was supposed to be an ordinary night of television. Another actor doing another round of interviews. Another talk show host running through his usual blend of charm and sarcasm. But this episode would become something else entirely. The night Samuel L. Jackson walked off Greg Gutfeld's set and left the audience in stunned silence. Like before we move on, don't forget to hit subscribe button. Jackson arrived early as he often did, his reputation for professionalism preceding him. He'd done this dance for decades, sit in the chair, smile for the crowd, talk about the new movie, and glide through with style. He'd faced tougher interviewers than most actors could imagine, and he'd always handled them with calm authority. Tonight he expected nothing different. Gutfeld greeted him warmly enough during the break. The two traded pleasantries about the weather, the traffic, the usual filler before the cameras rolled. Everything about it felt routine, until it wasn't. As the music faded and the red light blinked to signal they were live, Gutfeld turned on his showman's grin. "We're back, folks, with the legend himself, Samuel L. Jackson." The audience erupted with cheers. Jackson nodded, smiling, that effortless cool radiating off him. For the first few minutes, it was all smooth sailing. Gutfeld complimented his new movie, teased him about his famous intensity, and even got a laugh when he joked about Jackson being the only man who could make a single curse word sound like poetry. Jackson played along, relaxed, confident, everything going according to the usual late-night rhythm. Then, the shift. It started subtle, the kind of tonal shift only a seasoned guest could sense. Gutfeld leaned in a little closer, his voice lowering with that conspiratorial tone talk show hosts use when they're about to stir the pot. "You've played some of the toughest guys in movie history, Sam," he said. "But you're not really that guy in real life, are you?" Jackson smirked, keeping his posture easy. "I'm an actor, Greg. That's the job. Pretend to be other people." Gutfeld chuckled, but there was something else behind his grin. Sure, but you know what I mean. Hollywood builds up these big, bad images. Half the time, it's hard to tell if the audience remembers you're just regular folks, maybe sitting at home watching cooking shows like the rest of us." The crowd gave a light, uncertain laugh. Jackson didn't. His smile stayed, but the warmth was gone. "You're saying being an actor makes me regular?" "I'm saying it makes you human," Gutfeld replied, tilting back in his chair. "All that tough guy swagger, the yelling, the guns, that's all pretend. It's not like you've actually lived any of that, right? You're just performing." For a few seconds there was silence, the kind that doesn't belong on television. Even the crew seemed to sense something was unraveling. Jackson adjusted his jacket, leaned forward slightly, and spoke in a low, steady tone. "You know, I've been doing this for a long time. People don't come to see me wave a gun around. They come because they believe I mean it. That's what real acting is, making people feel something real." Gutfeld shrugged, smiling as if to keep control. "Hey, I'm not criticizing. I just think sometimes Hollywood forgets that actors aren't their characters. You know, some of you start to believe the myth." "You think that's what I do?" Jackson asked, his voice now cold and precise. Gutfeld hesitated for half a beat, then pushed forward. "The fatal mistake. Come on, Sam. You've built a career being the guy who doesn't take crap from anyone. But let's be honest, it's all scripted. None of it's real. You're an entertainer, not some kind of hero." Jackson exhaled, slow and deliberate. The studio audience didn't make a sound. "You invited me here to talk about my work, not to question my reality," he said. "But since we're being honest, there's a difference between what I do and what you do. When I act, people know it's fiction. They pay for that illusion. But when you sit here trying to tear people down on live TV, you call it journalism or wit. I call it performance without purpose." The crowd gasped, a ripple moving through the audience like electricity. Gutfeld tried to laugh it off, but his grin faltered. "I think you're taking this a little seriously, Sam." Jackson stood up slowly, adjusting his jacket with that same calm menace he'd brought to countless movie scenes. "No, Greg, I'm taking it exactly as seriously as you meant it." He looked toward the audience, gave a slight nod, and added, "You wanted a viral moment? Congratulations, you just got one." And with that, he turned and walked off the stage. No shouting, no dramatics, just quiet finality. The crowd rose to their feet instinctively, some clapping, others frozen in disbelief. The cameras kept rolling, catching Gutfeld sitting there momentarily speechless, something that had probably never happened on his show before. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. Headlines blared about the Samuel L. Jackson walkout. Pundits debated who crossed the line. Some said Jackson overreacted. Others said Gutfeld finally got what he deserved. But one thing was undeniable. That night, live on television, the world had seen something real. Not a scene from a movie, not a rehearsed performance, but a man refusing to be disrespected in front of millions. And as the internet replayed the moment again and again, one comment seemed to echo louder than all the others. That wasn't Samuel L. Jackson losing his temper. That was him showing what real composure looks like when someone tries to turn dignity into a punchline. By morning, the internet had turned into a battlefield. Clips of Samuel L. Jackson's walkout were plastered across every social platform imaginable. One video alone had racked up millions of views before sunrise, with headlines screaming variations of the same phrase. Samuel L. Jackson shuts down Greg Gutfeld live on air. Every news outlet, gossip site, and entertainment blog wanted a piece of the story. Some called it the most powerful moment of Jackson's career, and he wasn't even acting. Others, predictably, painted him as the villain. Gutfeld's defenders claimed he'd just been asking tough questions, but anyone who actually watched the clip could feel what really happened. There was no journalistic curiosity in Gutfeld's tone, no intellectual probing. It was mockery, a deliberate attempt to strip away the respect an actor like Jackson had earned over a lifetime. By midday, Gutfeld's show issued a carefully worded statement about the spirited exchange. They tried to frame it as two professionals engaging in honest dialogue, but the damage was done. The clip had been dissected, slowed down, and replayed in every imaginable angle. Commentators noticed the way Jackson's jaw tightened, the way Gutfeld's smirk lingered even after it was clear his guest wasn't amused. That wasn't dialogue. It was provocation. Hollywood insiders were quick to respond. Directors, actors, and crew members began posting their support. "Sam's one of the most respectful, grounded people in this industry," one co-star tweeted. "If he walked off, something must have been seriously out of line." Others were more blunt. "Greg wanted a viral moment. He got one. But it came at the cost of his credibility." Gutfeld, never one to back down, tried to reclaim the narrative. The following night on his show, he addressed the controversy head-on. Sitting behind his desk, he flashed that familiar sardonic smile and said, "Seems I struck a nerve last night. Guess some people can dish it out on screen but can't take a little friendly banter." The studio audience laughed on cue, but the laughter sounded forced, like people unsure if they were supposed to. He played a short clip of Jackson's exit. Edited, of course, trimmed just enough to make it seem harmless. But the internet wasn't buying it. The uncut version was already burned into everyone's minds. In that one unfiltered moment, Gutfeld had shown the world what happened when a man's ego met another man's composure, and lost. Meanwhile, Jackson remained silent. No tweets, no interviews, no statements, just silence. And that silence spoke louder than any PR-crafted response ever could. Every hour that passed without comment only made the moment more legendary. The public started filling in the blanks themselves, shaping him into a symbol of dignity, restraint, and power under pressure. It didn't take long before other celebrities started revisiting their own uncomfortable interview moments. Old clips resurfaced. Talk show hosts cutting guests off, mocking them, turning genuine conversation into spectacle. Suddenly, Jackson's walkout became more than just an incident. It became a statement about how modern media treats artists like chess pieces. Behind the scenes, however, the networks were panicking. Advertisers started questioning their association with Gutfeld's show. Ratings spiked the night of the controversy, but by the end of the week, they plummeted. What was meant to be viral gold turned into digital quicksand. Every attempt to defend his behavior only made the backlash worse. Then came the exclusive. A major entertainment outlet secured the first comment from Jackson. Not a press release, not an agent statement, but his own words. When asked about the incident, he simply said, "Respect is simple. You don't have to agree with me. You don't even have to like me. But you don't get to disrespect me and call it entertainment." That single quote ricocheted across the internet like a shot. Within hours, it was trending globally. Fans began posting clips of his most iconic movie scenes, drawing parallels between his character's moral clarity and the real-life poise he showed on Gutfeld's stage. The story reached far beyond Hollywood. Morning news shows debated it. Late-night monologues referenced it, and journalists started questioning whether talk shows had lost their sense of respect. Even other hosts, competitors of Gutfeld, subtly shaded him on air, calling the moment a masterclass in self-control from a true professional. By the weekend, a new narrative had formed. Jackson wasn't just a guest who walked out. He was a man who refused to let someone use him for spectacle. His silence, his timing, his exit, it all felt deliberate, powerful, almost cinematic. Gutfeld, on the other hand, had exposed something about himself that no PR team could repair: the fragility behind his arrogance. One tabloid headline summed it up perfectly. Samuel L. Jackson played no character that night. He played himself. And maybe that was what made it sting the most for Gutfeld. Because in that brief, unscripted moment, the man who'd built his career mocking others got outperformed by someone who didn't even need to act. By the next week, it wasn't just a viral clip anymore. It was a cultural flashpoint. What started as a late-night interview gone wrong had turned into a national debate. News anchors, comedians, journalists, and fans were all picking sides. Some claimed Samuel L. Jackson had overreacted, calling him thin-skinned, while others saw his exit as the ultimate act of class and self-respect in an era where provocation had become a business model. Everywhere Jackson went, cameras followed. Paparazzi waited outside his gym. Reporters camped outside his film set, all hoping for a quote or reaction. But he stayed composed, calm, private, unbothered. He wasn't feeding the story. The silence was his statement, and it infuriated Gutfeld's camp. Because the longer Jackson stayed quiet, the worse the host looked. Meanwhile, clips from Gutfeld's past interviews began resurfacing. Old segments where he had taken similar digs at other celebrities. What once passed as edgy humor now looked like a pattern of thinly veiled disrespect. Fans started connecting the dots. Maybe this wasn't an isolated moment at all, but the inevitable collision between a provocateur desperate for attention and a man who'd spent his life earning it. Behind closed doors, Fox's executives weren't amused. The network's PR team was flooded with angry emails from sponsors, some threatening to pull their ads. The numbers were undeniable. Viewership had spiked for 3 nights, then cratered by the weekend. People weren't tuning in to see Gutfeld anymore. They were tuning in to see how bad the fallout would get. It didn't help that Hollywood had turned Jackson into a symbol overnight. At a film premiere the following week, a reporter asked him if he regretted walking off the show. Jackson simply smiled and said, "You don't regret standing up." The crowd around him cheered. That one quote went viral again, almost eclipsing the original incident. late-night comedians from rival networks pounced on the controversy. One joked, "Greg Gutfeld tried to make Samuel L. Jackson look small. That's like trying to make Mount Everest look short." Another said, "Samuel walked off calmly, no yelling, no threats, just quiet power." Meanwhile, Gutfeld's probably still explaining to his producers why his ego cost them advertisers. By then, the internet had turned the moment into a movement. Artists, athletes, and even politicians began using the clip to talk about dignity, respect, and professionalism. Some wrote essays about how Jackson's restraint was a reminder that silence can sometimes be louder than shouting. Others turned the footage into memes, looping the moment he stood up, jacket perfectly buttoned, as the caption read, "When you know your worth, you don't argue." Gutfeld tried to strike back. In an interview with a conservative outlet, he said, "Look, I asked him honest questions. If Hollywood elites can't handle that, that's on them." But the problem wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. Smug, defensive, condescending. The more he talked, the smaller he looked. His fans clapped online, but even some of his colleagues started distancing themselves, calling his behavior unnecessary and beneath the profession. Then came the twist no one expected. A week later, Jackson received a standing ovation when he appeared at an awards ceremony in Los Angeles. He hadn't planned to address the controversy, but as the applause thundered on, he couldn't resist. He took the mic, looked out at the audience of his peers, and said with a grin, "Sometimes walking away says more than staying seated ever could." The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. That one line sealed it. Jackson wasn't just the actor who'd walked off a disrespectful talk show. He was the man who'd redefined how a celebrity could handle being provoked. Industry veterans called it one of the most iconic non-movie moments of his career. Directors sent him scripts overnight. His public image, already legendary, reached new heights. For younger actors, it became a story they'd whisper about in green rooms. Don't let them bait you. Be like Sam. Stand up. Walk out. Gutfeld, on the other hand, became the punchline he used to deliver. His show continued, but the energy was gone. Guests grew cautious. Publicists started declining invitations. No one wanted to risk becoming the next viral moment. His producers scrambled for a comeback. Gimmicks, new segments, even a fake apology disguised as humor. Nothing worked. The internet had moved on, but not before permanently labeling him as the host who tried to humiliate Samuel L. Jackson, and ended up humiliating himself. In the weeks that followed, entertainment journalists began writing op-eds about what the clash really meant. One headline read, "Samuel L. Jackson didn't walk out, he walked over." Another put it even more sharply, "When class meets controversy, only one survives." As the dust settled, the world remembered that moment not as a scandal, but as a statement. A quiet, deliberate stand against arrogance disguised as humor. Jackson didn't slam doors or throw insults. He simply decided the conversation was over. And somehow, that calm defiance became louder than anything Gutfeld had said that night. In a media culture built on outrage, Jackson's restraint became radical. And long after the headlines faded, one truth remained. When the cameras stop rolling, when the applause dies down, and the viral noise fades, respect still carries more weight than any punchline ever could. If you like this video, then subscribe.